All right, listen, let's just get right into the second deal right now. Not the second deal, the second part of the first deal. Wow. So, the second part of the first deal is the construction problems that I had. Okay? So we went through, I got all the list here, everything that we went through on the first show, episode, video, whatever it was. It was basically how I got the deal, where I got it sourced from, the information that was given to me, the lender that was involved, and the learning that I had to do with financing. I went into timeline. I went into not having a team set up beforehand. I went into the team that you should have set up before you jump into real estate. And a few other topics. So if you didn't see the first episode, you need to see the first episode before this one, because it'll just give you a good prep as to what I am already in at this point before I'm jumping into the construction, which is right now. So I told you purchase price was $227, and the ARV, which stands for after repair value, was $380. But that was all based on a $50,000 construction budget, which I was granted from the lender. Right? I gave them a scope of work, which is basically all the cosmetic stuff that was going to get done. They looked it over. They said, oh, perfect, looks good. That's the thing. Not a lot of lenders take the time to really break down your scope of work and try to understand if everything makes sense. Especially now. This was 2014. Real estate was rocking in Jersey. Real estate was absolutely rocking. So lenders were just like, dude, get these people money, because the appreciation covers a lot of these people's asses if they go under, because it was all the houses were appreciating at a fast enough rate that even if construction went over, appreciation covered it. So the lenders were making bank. Lenders were making bank. So the construction costs at $50,000. I had estimates, and I really had only one true estimate that to get the whole job done. I wanted a GC. I knew that I didn't know enough about construction to take on the project, with the horns myself. Like it wasn't practical. That was probably the only realistic thing I had in my mind at that point was, okay, you know nothing about construction, so you should probably hire somebody who does. Well, right idea, great in theory, bad in practice. Because I ended up hiring a contractor who I had never seen their work. I had never seen their efficiency on time. I've never even seen their cost effectiveness as to their project. And at this point, remember, I didn't know anything about construction. So what I did was I structured the deal so that the contractor was responsible for everything, labor and materials. I'm telling you right now, knowing what I know now, do not do that, especially to start off. Do not have a deal where you are paying for labor and materials. Don't do it. Or just paying, or what I'm saying is don't do a deal where you are paying the GC to handle the labor and the materials. Because what does that do? What that does is you do not learn the cost of materials. So how are you going to know if he's going to charge you $50 for a 2x4, how do you know it's not $50 for a 2x4? You don't. You just look at your budget and you say, okay, well, I'll just deduct $50 minus his labor. Oh, it's under $50,000. Perfect. That works. And that's not including when change orders come or when the project gets adjusted or if problems happen when they tear the walls down. Like, there is so much involved. There really is so much involved. So you have to be mitigating your risk, mitigating your chances of losing money, because every single time something goes wrong, every single time something goes different, you're the one that's affected. Your bottom line, not your contractors. If you sign the contract with him, this is what it's going to cost. He can only really go up in price with change orders and this. If he's a really good, ethical, looking out for you type of contractor, he'll figure out ways to save him money, save you money, or do things a little bit better or more effectively within the scope of work so that it helps you, but do not count on that. Do not count on hiring a contractor who's going to take the time to walk you through and then give you multiple scenarios and the best scenario, and this is the best way to fix this because it saves you money and saves us time. Don't expect that. So what you have to do in the beginning is take on the responsibility for the materials. I swear by this. Any job that you get into now, take on the materials. Understand the cost of stuff. Negotiate it yourself. You can get a really tight estimate for labor because you can ask, how many guys? How long is it going to take you to get it done? What do you need? If you can and then you go get the materials. You price out the materials. You negotiate the materials down, and you just make sure they're there on the day that they need them. And then you already know how many guys are going to be there, and you know how many days it's going to take them. So you can do the math. 5 guys, 5 days. If it's going to cost you $4,000, well then you take out your calculator and you go, okay, it's going to cost 5 guys. What did I say? 5 guys, 5 days? Yeah. So $4,000 divided by 5 guys divided by 5 days. So the guys are making $160 each a day. Okay? So each day is $800. Perfect. So now you know $160 a day. Is that reasonable? I don't know. You have to find out in that area if that's a reasonable price for the type of labor that they're doing. But it's so important to understand that you need to take on the responsibility for doing the materials. It is part of the business that I didn't do until first, second, third, my 4th and 5th deal was the first time I did the materials. And you know what I learned? I learned a hell of a lot about materials. And I just looked back and I said, oh my God, all these deals that I did that I didn't do the materials for. Oh, man, was I getting ripped off. All that money out of my pocket. So you need to understand the importance of doing some of the legwork. Do some of the legwork. And materials is the easiest legwork you can do because you're getting the money from the lender anyway, right? You're getting the money that's already been approved. Labor and materials has been approved from the lender. So now you take that money. If you can negotiate the material list to be priced better in your favor, that's money in your pocket. That's money from the lender you can put right in your pocket as a management fee, right? You can do that as a management fee. And then you negotiate just the labor costs with your contractor or your subs, depending on how you do it. I'll get into that because this job, I used a GC. Investors, I highly recommend you do not use a GC unless you are doing major construction. I'm talking about complete demos, adding levels, full-on extensions. Like, I'm talking about new development. If you're going to do stuff like that, then I suggest you go the GC. Anything under that, if you do not have the time to be on the job, to order the materials, to be the liaison between the contractor and the materials and the financing and do that whole legwork, if you don't have the time to do that, then maybe flipping isn't your thing. Honestly, you shouldn't do that. The only other way I can... Now listen, everybody's different. There's people that would argue with me, and I'm fine with that. This is just my perspective on the way I did it, and I don't want to see you go through what I did. And I'm telling you, if you're going to do it my way, this is the way I recommend. You do the legwork. You get the materials. You negotiate everything. You figure out what it is on the back end side of the business as far as all the purchasing. Let them worry about the labor. If you have to invest in a GC because you don't have the time, you don't have this, then you need to be able to afford them as a partner. You want skin in the game from them. You do not want to just have them as a GC on your job and you're paying them their draws, right? Set up the draws. They have a draw schedule. You don't want to just set that up and then let them do their thing. They have to have skin in the game. They have to have rewards for getting done quicker, maybe a 5% kicker on the sale price, something. You need to keep them engaged. You need to keep them partnered into the deal where it benefits them to get your project done faster than anybody else's. It benefits them to get your project done nicer, because if it sells more, it benefits them. There are things, if you're going to use a GC, you have to incentivize them. Because a GC typically is a GC because he has a lot of jobs going on. He has a lot of subs under him that he's got a lot of mouths to feed. So if he's going to get a deposit somewhere else to start a job, and he's waiting on a draw for you, and there's no incentive as to why he wants to really push through that next phase of your project when he's got 3 deposits he can pick up right away, and it's all demo on 3 jobs, he's just going to run his guys. He's just going to run his guys and get 30 grand, let's say, on bigger jobs. So you have to incentivize your contractors very wisely, or you make them partners. Make them partners. And I would even go as far as, it pains me to say this. I wouldn't say 50-50, but I would give them a substantial amount. I say, listen, if you want to buy the labor or if you want to buy the materials and you want to pay for the labor of your guys, I'm okay with it. But I want to be partners because I want this project to go as smooth as possible, as efficient as possible, and I want us to make as much money as possible. If it means that I have to take a haircut and part of my profits go to you because you are going to work these guys and get this house done before the deadline with better materials, and it's just going to look nicer because it's going to benefit the both of us in the long run, then you do it. You take the haircut. There's a saying that I learned when I first got into real estate, and I had tough times trying to figure out ways that I could apply it, right? And it was, don't step over dollars to pick up pennies, okay? So don't think, oh God, either I try to save myself 10 grand. I could put 10 grand in my pocket though. But I could put 10 grand in my pocket. 10 grand's not going to change your life, okay? In the end, 10 grand's not going to change your life. So if you can move 10 grand into his pocket, but all of a sudden you save on time, you get better materials, and you get the work done, less hiccups, nothing, in and out, done. It is worth, I'm telling you, it's worth 10 grand. It's worth 10 grand to say, hey, make sure this goes smooth. This is your bonus check if it does. And that's something that I didn't learn until my 4th and 5th projects when I started doing the materials, when I started to really learn. And these are the projects that I just recently finished. These aren't even projects that were like, 10 years. Like, no, these are recent projects because each one of the projects that I've had took time, took learning. We're talking 7, 8, 9, 15 months at a time for each project sometimes. So I don't want you to end up, and I keep saying this, I don't want you to end up doing the same things that I did. So what are we learning right now? You go get the materials. On your first job, when you find your contractor that you feel comfortable with and you've seen their work and you see how they put out their final product, if you're comfortable with that, perfect. Now you say, you're the guy that I want. I love the work you do. The guys show up, you get the job done. You get the job done right. You put out a quality product. I'm going to get the materials. I'm going to get them all. You let me know what days you want them here. Give me a heads up. And then you structure it that way. And then you get the materials there. Then you incentivize them. Here's your bonuses. These are your bonus opportunities. If you get this phase done at this time, if you get this phase done at this time, you get a $1,500 kicker here, a $2,000 kicker here. Or if you finish the whole project at this point, you get a $10,000 kicker here. And now these are all numbers I'm just pulling out of my ass, but you know what I'm saying. Incentivize it. Obviously, you're going to look at your margin. If in the end of the deal, you're only making 30 grand, you're not going to give 10 grand away unless they're partners, right? So you're going to have to make that judgment. But if you're making $100,000 on a deal, then give them a $10,000 kicker at the end to make sure it gets done. So get your estimates, negotiate your prices, and then boom, perfect. Can you afford the $10,000 kicker? Hey, by the way, Jimmy, I got a $10,000 kicker for you if you can get this done and we can sell over X amount of money. Perfect. Work with it. So that was my first problem. I let this GC have complete control of labor and materials. So when materials didn't get delivered, what did they do? They blamed it on the delivery people. They blamed it on this. And now I didn't have these contacts. So it's not like I could call up the delivery company and say, hey, where's the delivery? My guys are here waiting. No. I had to call the GC, and the GC said, oh, it's coming tomorrow, or oh, it's coming Friday. And I had to wait, and I didn't have the leverage in order to keep the job moving. And I had money invested in them to get the job done. So I was in a very bad leverage position. Very bad leverage position, especially for a project that is supposed to be my project. I had very little control of it. If I have control of the materials, I have control of the job. Because I can get labor anytime. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying now? Not only do you learn what things cost so that you know if something doesn't sound right, but now all of a sudden you have control of your job. I know when my materials are getting delivered. I know when something's delayed. I know when something's not right because I'm the contact. So when I talk to my labor guys, my subs and everything like that, and I tell them, hey, it's coming on Friday. Make sure you're there on Friday. Schedule everything around it so that you're here on Friday. Now I have the power to penalize them if they don't show up. Hey, by the way, if you don't show up, I'm on a strict deadline. If you don't show up, I'm going to give you 2 days of fees, 2 days where I'm going to deduct money. The third day, I got a new team in there because my materials are there. So the first day you don't show up, I'm calling other people. Hey, Bobby didn't show up today. So he's got one more day tomorrow. The following day, I need to know if you're going to be free to come in on the job. And you work it that way. You keep the pressure on the whole time. Very important. Very important at controlling the materials part of it. It's like supply chain. I mean, even in the army or between countries, the most important thing is supply chain. Anytime there's war or anything like that, the first things they attack is supply chain because no one can survive if you get rid of the things they need. So, as long as you control the supply chain, I control the in and out of my business. I control what gets in, what comes out, what's returned, I control it. Now, some people might say that you don't want so much control, but I'm telling you, when you're starting out and you want to learn the business, you need to have the control. You really do. You need to get that in your head because you need to understand. You need to understand everything. And the only way you understand everything is by doing the legwork. So, continuing. So now they had the power. They had all the leverage. Everything was getting delayed. I started asking for receipts. That's typically the way it was going for me. Anytime I started losing trust and stuff wasn't making sense in my head, I would start calling for receipts. Like, I'm not going to give you draws anymore. I'm not going to give you your next construction draw until you give me all the receipts for every material that you purchased for my house. And honestly, they can bullshit that. They don't even have to give you the receipts that make sense. Like, it doesn't even make sense. I'm looking at these things and going, all right. You have no idea. But that's how I was trying to recoup. That's how I was trying to validate my own mistakes. And I was in a really bad spot, because I finally realized I was behind on the deal as far as time-wise. My interest payments had run out at this point. I was using some of the some of the money from the draws to pay the holding costs, which is something you can do, right? I actually recommend you do this, but do it from the beginning of the deal when you get your estimate. So let me get into it. So when you first get your loan and you submit your scope of work, it's important to float in money throughout your draws to accommodate your management fee, right? That's part of your scope of work. You managing the project, you should be compensated for that. So managing your management fees should come with every draw also. On top of that, you should allocate some of the funds in your construction estimate. I would boost it up after I know my percentage to the holding costs. So if the holding costs were going to be, for instance, if the holding costs were easy number $2,000 a month, then I would absolutely, if I think it's going to be 7 months, a 7-month flip, I'm absolutely putting $7,000 more in my estimates because I want at least half of my mortgage payment, my interest payment paid through the draws. Okay? So I'm going to get approved for the money. That $7,000 isn't going to make a huge difference, make or break. You know, you add $500 here, you add $1,000 on this, you had $500 here. In the end, you're $7,000 more, and then perfect. Half of your holding costs are taken care of. Okay? So I always believe in having a reserve to cover it regardless. Okay? So you have your $12,000 for the 6 months to cover the $2,000 a month for 6 months to do the flip. But I also incorporate a $7,000 buffer where each month I'm getting $1,000 to help pay that mortgage payment down if I need it. Okay? And I'm getting my management fees. So there is money in there to float you. Very important. On this deal, remember, because I didn't calculate my points up front and lost the $9,000 there, thinking that was going to be on the end of the deal. No, that was on the front of the deal. And so I had to move $9,000 to the front of the deal, and then that left me empty on the back of the deal. Or throughout the deal, I should say. So I digress. But with the construction now, I had these people working. I had them calling in their receipts. I was trying to recoup what I had. I didn't buffer myself with more of on the loan. And I had to make the decision. I actually, at this point, I had my dad come in and take a look at the project because he's not in residential construction, but he works with a lot of contractors in his business, in his field of work, I should say. And he took a couple of his reliable guys that he used for commercial and brought them in, and they took a look at it, and they, hit me with some facts about the position that I was in, which was not a good one. I didn't have money to float the house anymore. I was already in the hole with the contractors that were there. So I basically had to fire them, bring in a whole new team. They were willing, because they saw the position I was in, they were actually willing to start the work without payment. And I was extremely lucky for that. And they ended up wrapping the house up. I went from $50,000 budget, I went to $80,000. $80,000. Most of it was at a loss to that first contractor. I mean, they had overpaid for demolition, overpaid for dumpsters, they overpaid for materials. They left me with a gutted house that was unfinished. They didn't even have sheetrock in. They hadn't painted. They didn't install the cabinets and the counters. They just installed the tubs. It's basically it. Tubs and toilets, I think maybe just tubs. Maybe just the tubs. I don't even think they put the toilets in because the tile wasn't even done. So it was a mess. Honestly, it was a mess. I just paid them basically for demo, clean out, and I overpaid them. And yeah, it left me at a bad spot. I had the next team come in. They pretty much wrapped up everything. And when it was all said and done, I was $80,000 in the hole. I had run up my credit cards. I had to ask people for money to lend in. It was a tough time. It was a tough time to get this house done. And when I finally got to the point where I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, I had put in new floors. I had to, in order to manage my budget even better, I had to not significantly, but slightly downgrade the product that I was putting out because I had to get it done. So instead of getting, white shaker cabinets, I had to get walnut shaker cabinets that were running a special, and they were a little bit cheaper. Instead of getting a package for each unit in the 2-family for the appliances, I had to get, a more affordable package, maybe a mix and match, whatever they were trying to move. And the countertops, instead of picking the countertops that I wanted, the granite countertops that I wanted, because I wanted this to be a nice 2-family house, instead of picking the nice ones, I picked whatever they had available. And, in the end, my real estate agent, who had told me the numbers and then told me in order to get the 380, this is what I need in it, wasn't necessarily what I ended up putting in it. So that ended up hurting my sale price because it wasn't the white shakers, it wasn't the Calicotta granite or the quartz. Like it was not as sellable. So when you end up, and you'll realize this, when you end up trying to rob Peter to pay Paul in this business, it only compounds over the time and ends up hurting you more. So you have to get really good at understanding what to put value in or what to put money towards because it increases the most value, how to manage the process and the timeline, how to manage your team, the contractors, and ultimately how to maximize your profits. And that's all learning. It's all learning that takes place. So I lost money on the time, 8 months. It ended up costing me 8 months. I went to $80,000 in construction, blew through my reserves. Now I had interest on my credit cards that I was maxing out. These were all things that eventually had to get paid out, which ate away the profit margin even more. My lenders obviously were thrilled that they were making that I was making my monthly payments, and they were getting 14% on their loan annually. And what I realized, because this, like I said, this was my first deal, what I also realized were contractors in general, they work very quickly in the beginning. Right when they start the job, they work very quickly. You have to set the expectations right from the beginning that you're not a friend. You're not a friend. And I got caught in a couple bad deals because genuinely I am a nice guy. I'm a nice guy. I want to work. I'm all about teamwork. I'm all about figuring out ways where we both win. And that personality is great in a team atmosphere, but it's not ideal for moving a project along when one person has their own agenda. So, and that's the thing. I had a GC and they had their own agenda. I had my agenda. If we're not on the same page, it's tough to move people along with a nice personality. They're just going to go, do what they have to do to make the money, which I understand. I put a lot of that problem on myself. I take a lot of ownership for the mistakes, because had I been better, had I been more educated, had I been more adamant about learning and not being ignorant and jumping in, then I would have been in a better position, and I wouldn't have had to rely on so many people to keep me in the game. And this was really about the construction. I know I didn't dive so much into the actual construction part because that stuff is the easy part. Like, the actual construction is easy because you have the experts doing it. What I really wanted to make sure that you understood was where you keep your leverage. You keep your leverage when you own the materials. You keep your leverage when you own the time. So you need to focus your energy throughout the construction process on managing your time whether it's incentivizing contractors or figuring out a better system than I had, or owning the supply line. Supply chain has to be in your hands. So the next video is going to be the post-construction part where everything was cleared and we were going to sell. A lot of the problems that I had with closing and the building departments, getting COs, fire, all that stuff. On top of it, when the ARV came back and it was 350. So remember, 380 was my original ARV. Now it's 350. So I went over on construction, over on time, and now I'm under on ARV. So now you can see it's adding up. It's coming out of my pocket. So I hope you enjoyed this second show. This was episode 2 of 3 on my first deal in Bloomfield, New Jersey. And it was a shit show. Wow. Sorry about that. It was a shit show. Wow. Listen, I've been talking for 30 minutes. That's what happens. Everything gets dried up. I can't really speak too much. So, as always, you can check me out. I'm going to have the links. I'm going to have the things flying around. It's going to be pretty cool. And follow me on Instagram. Continue to watch my videos on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok. Maybe you'll get lucky. You'll see me pull out one of the trends because I'm a pretty sick dancer. But enjoy the next show. And I hope you enjoyed this one. All right. Stay safe. It's a crazy time. Put out some content. Do something. And I'll see you later.